welcome back. It's the Marketer of the Day podcast, and Steven Schneider is here from TrioSEO. Steven is the co-founder and the CEO of TrioSEO. They are a blog writing agency that helps online businesses drive high-intent organic traffic through bottom-of-the-funnel content. And Steven has co-owned a portfolio of 40 blogs. He's managed 400 articles monthly, scaled to 7 figures, and today TrioSEO creates content that converts browsers into buyers. So their team manages strategy, outlines, writing, publishing, improving the UX conversion, so many exciting things, so much to think about, talk about. So Steven, how the heck are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. And so, we talked about you, we talked about SEO, but is there anything I left out on that intro? Is there anything that is like uniquely you or just gets you excited and passionate to jump out of bed and face the day?
No, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I'm a big SEO nerd. I love work. I think it's all one big video game at the end of the day, and I love business and entrepreneurship. So I'm a very lucky guy, and I get to, wake up every day excited to do what I get to do.
Wonderful. And I'd love to tap into some of that mentality, the video game thing, because there's so many people out there that they watch TV, they're on the apps, they're brightly colored, they're exciting, and they put so many hours a day into that. And it's like, if only you put a small fraction of that into the real money, then you can have the dream lifestyle you always wanted if you swapped the real video games for the video game of life. So how do we tap into some of that excitement when we get cross-eyed looking at SEO, thinking about content? How do we get as pumped up as you?
Yeah, I think it really stems back to the first time I made money online. It was in college, and my mentor and previous business co-founder back in the day showed me all about SEO and how to leverage SEO to generate organic traffic and affiliate marketing in general. And I just kind of was dumbfounded by the idea that you could do this and people would buy and visit your site and all of just the way of or SEO. And at that time, I mean, he was already making, upwards of $10,000 plus per month, and we were in college. And so once I realized that that was on the table, I kind of scrapped everything I knew about trying to, study finance and go into that, corporate 9 to 5 path, and just went heads down in SEO and kind of realized that this was the way it was going to be.
Well, I love that. And what I like about your story and a lot of the kind of changing trajectory stories is sometimes people say Mark Zuckerberg dropped out, Bill Gates, but they went to college, right? They had the best path available to them. But then during college, they're like, hey, I'm going to pivot to something else. And they didn't just sit and dreaming, and they didn't just drop or flake on what they were doing for a dream. They took action. They saw some results. And they also they had mentors, right? They had you. They didn't just go it alone, didn't just sit alone. They kind of had someone to help them along with the dream. And so what excites you about SEO? You think about, well, people are searching for these phrases, and you can outrank someone, edge someone out, dominate the pages, get all these backlinks. What is there to know about SEO, or what kind of got you excited when you first learned about it?
It was really the idea that SEO compounds over time. And so really the people who are good at SEO are those who are patient enough to see it come to life. And so most people give up because, waiting for 6+ months to see any benefit or gain is a hard play. I mean, you have to be really patient, but the more you're patient, it's this snowball effect, and it kind of has that exponential growth. So, it could be this really slow climb, and then one day it explodes. And once you realize that, the keywords that you're putting on their site, it's not a one-to-one correlation with the article that has one keyword. A keyword can actually, or an article can have hundreds of keywords on that page, and each of those keywords is a potential door to your website. So over time, as you're creating content, you're just adding all these doors and stuff to your website, and allows more people to find it. So, the better you are at it, the more visitors you can attract. And then over time, you just have this organic traffic machine that allows you to just have a steady income flow for customers and leads and however else you want to leverage it.
I love this door metaphor here, that when you're writing the content, this is something where people might link to it, people might search for it, they might then discuss it on social media. And so how do you attack all of this? Because as you said, there's a lot to sort of consistently do for many weeks or months until it begins paying off. So what's the typical client like? What does someone want? Where are they stuck? What do they get from you when you begin to go on this SEO journey?
So we focus on content specifically. So we look at keyword research and try to put together a game plan in terms of how we're either going to create guides or blogs or look at upgrading or adding on new service pages such as like sales landing pages. And then from there, once we get, it's probably at least 15, 20 hours of research, we'll have hundreds of keywords and hundreds of topics to go after. And it's just really about prioritizing them and creating a roadmap that makes sense, that's aligned with bottom of the funnel, high intent traffic, but also speaks to their ideal customer, their goals, and kind of who they are as a brand and where they want to connect with that customer. So we pretty much just take a look at an overabundance of information and then whittle it down to a 90-day strategy. And then every 90 days, we pretty much reassess, take a look at the game plan, make sure we're on track, and go from there.
And so is it safe to say that when you have the sort of 90-day strategy, it gives you enough to do, but it sort of like sets the expectations where there's still more to be done after? Because I find this where I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's the big long to-do list. I've got to figure out the content and the new ideas. And you talked about the page navigation, all these other things. But if you say, well, here's all the stuff we could do, but here's what's important, right? Here's the order of importance. Here's a low-hanging fruit. When you mention this 90-day plan, it sounds like, okay, we'll have all the stuff that's being accomplished every week, but we don't overload ourselves, and we acknowledge that there's more to be done after the 90 days. This is just a great start.
Yeah, exactly. So all of our packages run in a kind of set number of articles per month. So like our minimum package is 7 articles per month. So that gives us enough runway to, plan those 7 topics. We create the outline briefs. We have the writers write them. Our team edits them. We upload them. We optimize them. We publish them. So all of that work gets done within the month. And then that kind of just allows us to turn that over on the next month, hit the ground running, and we already are working on those 7 next topics. So the way that we kind of look at it is over that sprint, it's a total of 21 topics for that client. And our team just moves through them. And we have kind of a pretty steady flow for kind of like an assembly line of content, you might call it, where it's just like pump out the outline, writers get it, uploads team get it. And as soon as that one's published, the whole thing just restarts. So everyone has their kind of like role in that process. And then from there on out, it's just like the little tweaks that kind of move the needle for your SEO.
I love it. So you have your assembly line, you know what you're doing, you act fast. And that's what can be frustrating when I talk to SEO agency owners on this podcast, when sometimes they say, oh, we do a little bit of this or that, or like talk to us, figure out a plan. I love what you're saying here of like, hey, we got 90 days. We'll make the 21 pieces of content. We'll do the uploading. We'll see how it went and all these other cool things. And to give us a cool idea of what it is that you do you have a fun case study success story? Do you have a real life recap to tell us about a real company that came to you in a certain niche and you went through this process?
Yeah, so we're actually working on a couple of case studies right now because we're at the 1 year mark for Trio SEO. And so we have some pretty fun data to play with, but I don't want to release too much. But we have a couple, like, for example, where one of them is like in the mergers and acquisition space, and they came to us and they're kind of like a newer company wanting to invest in the long-term outlook of their SEO. And we were kind of just, okay, let's see how we can assess this. And most of the topics we went after were things like how to sell your Shopify company or how to sell insert type of company here articles, where it's more or less people trying to figure out what is the next steps of selling my company if I'm about to go down this step. And what we did is we just created a bunch of user guides around, how to understand valuation metrics, how to understand the types of people that would potentially be buying it, how to create a team around, lawyers and accountants and all the sort of stakeholders of that process, but did it for each industry or business type. And then as we published that content, it started to rank, and over there, we had a pretty good success run with driving a lot of organic relevant traffic to that company. So it's been fun to see a lot of things come to life and make sure that every strategy is unique. So we got to get to dabble in becoming a jack of all trades, master of none. Then I get to see what it's like to experience that niche without actually diving into it head first. But yeah, our clients have all seen a lot of great results, and we're excited for the case studies to come out.
Well, cool. And when some of these things that you've been saying here makes me think that, well, if someone is on the hunt for knowledge, for some kind of solution, how do I sell my Shopify store? It's not a one-shot deal, right? Like no one's going to do one search and just be like, oh, cool, now I know how to sell it. Like some of these problems are really big. And even say they came across some 50-page blog posts, then that's like a lot to dig through. And many times we're looking for just like a quick win, like a little bit of progress. Okay, so here's just the first or second step. I need to look into this kind of accounting aspect or this kind of software. And then also there's the customization, right? Since we're living in this day and age of Google and AI and social media, we're like, hey, I want to search my exact situation, right? I have the Shopify store in this exact niche and I want to sell it like this. Like I'll be searching something specifically. And if I find this exact blog post that speaks exactly to my needs, it's like, okay, cool. Now I found what I'm looking for. And that seems like that leaves you a lot of fertile ground for the SEO, right? Because like, I imagine if someone was not an SEO expert like you, if they were trying to go about this themselves, they'd be like, I can only think of like 5 or 10 like long tail blog post titles. But someone like you would say, hey, people are searching this. They're searching like all these kind of really specific things. Like there's no limit to the amount of like really specific content and solutions you can provide without repeating yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. We look at the long tail keywords, and usually the ones that are more niche have more opportunity because people are more invested in that research. If, like, for example, you're looking at best winter jackets, someone's not really, they're looking at a jacket, but, they're still maybe doing research. But, if someone's looking at the best Gore-Tex winter jacket under $150 for men, it's a pretty specific search query, which means that someone's, closer down the funnel, they're ready to buy. So, we apply that same logic to our clients and make sure that how does that ideal customer who's aiming to connect with our client who doesn't really know it yet is on that path, and we can actually just read that guide, and then we can actually help set them up in that nurture sequence, whether it's a lead magnet, a newsletter, whatever it might be, to get that traffic into their CMS and actually over to their sales team.
And so that's a great point you mentioned there too, is then what should happen after someone arrives on your webpage, right? With SEO, there's a lot of thinking about the keyword research and the ranking and the organic traffic, but it's like, well, hey, now what's it's all leading to, right? It's leading to the lead magnet or the links or the next steps. And so I'm sure that in everything that you do and the, seeing what is out there, like what kind of mistakes do you see happening with the SEO? Do you see people like not have a good next step call to action? Like what kind of SEO mistakes do you see that we can avoid?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one right there is that if you have traffic to your website, it's a very rare occurrence where the visitor will just immediately sign up for services without, doing a little more due diligence on their end. And so it's a pretty natural segue to want to get them into your funnel and say, how do we get them into a newsletter that is going to send them an update once per week and keep us top of mind, but also build more trust into their next decision? Or how do we give them a lead magnet that actually has a newsletter attached at the trail end of that? It's really just about building trust with that visitor over time. People just aren't in that mindset to pull the trigger, especially if it's a high ticket service. Going back to the M&A example, going through the mergers and acquisitions or an exit is not an overnight process by any means, and so people are really going to need to vet or want to talk to an expert or just learn more about their team before they even make a call. So yeah, it's just really about building trust on that page, and then there's other ways to do that through, do you have an author bio? Is it set up like who is the writer behind this? Is there trust built into the design? Just making sure that it's a really nice on-page experience, and the user experience of that content is just met with credibility and authority from the start.
Well, I love it. And by you giving an answer like this, I'm going to be looking at every web page I see from now on in a different light, right? Looking at, okay, what's the bio underneath? What's the user experience? Do they have an opt-in newsletter, lead magnet? And so the lead magnet thing, I don't know if I'm just like mentally blocked as far as that aspect of internet marketing, but like I've been doing internet marketing for 22 years, and I probably make like a new lead magnet every 3 or 4 years, but I'm down on myself, right, Stephen? I wish that I put out a new lead magnet every year. And then I look at it a couple years later, I'm like, it feels sort of out of date. And so like, what's your strategy or your thought process with this lead magnet? Do you like look at like the best performing blog posts? Do you say, well, let's figure out like a checklist of screenshots? Like how does someone like me overcome the I don't know, the low self-esteem when it comes to lead magnets.
We actually try to blend a little bit of SEO with our lead magnets. And so, for example, what we do is we take a look at the keywords that could potentially be a lead magnet in itself, and then we'll create a blog around that. So, for our own site, Trio SEO, we actually we're ranking for SEO SOPs, standard operating procedures. And what we did is we just downloaded a bunch of our own internal SOPs, routed them up into a nice fancy lead magnet, and now that's a top ranking lead magnet on our site. So, we have a way to funnel organic traffic. And then we can also know, well, if that's a kind of a hit from an organic perspective, there's a high likeliness that that will also translate to other pieces of content as well. So that we could just show that as an exit intent pop up and insert an action to any sort of content that's maybe a blog or a sales page, and just kind of try to drive awareness that way. So we're really data heavy, or it's going to be stakeholder heavy, making sure if you have talked to your, ideal customers, what are the main questions they might have? What are the main problems they're facing right now, and how can you at least meet them halfway with those problems and give them a solution that's ready to build that trust into your product or your service.
Wonderful. I love the round trip kind of thinking here, right? Of that, well, we have this problem, which is SEO and lead magnet, but let's keep revisiting it, right? Let's see, what web page do we make that leads to the lead magnet? Well, maybe we already have some kind of like byproducts, and we can just kind of like repackage and make it kind of like more outward user friendly. Make the lead magnet. Maybe that leads to us creating some other web pages. Well, now we go in and talk to our customers. What else do they want? This is some cool thinking, and it's like I've been saying. It's like it definitely is like a different kind of mindset, or requires us to think in some of these ways, right? Like SEO guys are real big on the data, the stats, and instead of me just guessing, like what's converting well, what are people clicking on well, and so I just kind of it's always great to hear about the process, or about just your kind of your way of thinking that's different from mine. I'm like, cool. Well, if I need help with SEO, like this is the guy to talk to. And as we said right before the call, like there's Nathan and there's Connor from outsource school and from accounts balance and all that, and then I see the pictures of them too, and then I've also been seeing the pictures of the three of you guys. And so what's cool about what I've been known from following Nathan from all over the years is he had the outsource kind of marketplace, right, free up. He went on podcasts to get the traffic from that, sold the company, and then that led to like the accounts balance, the service. But then when I went to accounts balance maybe a year or two ago, I was like, whoa, the SEO on this is like really good, right? He's got like all these tabs, all these pages. He does all the things you're talking about. He solves like all sorts of problems, gets you to click, sends you to like sign up for a call or to find out more information. So how did all of this lead to you? How did you end up working with these two guys?
Yeah, so it was just really serendipitous good luck, I mean, on my part. So when I left my other company about probably 2 years ago at this point, I was kind of in this weird limbo state and trying to figure out what to do. I took about a year off just to kind of like chill out. And I worked at a startup for some time, and I dread it every day of the startup. Like I'm a natural born entrepreneur, and the thought of working for someone else was just really hard for me. So I quit on the spot, no backup plan. And during that time, I was on LinkedIn a lot. I was just networking with random folks, and I was trying to figure out what was going to be my next move in entrepreneurship while kind of also on this other side journey. And eventually, when I was on LinkedIn, I ran into Connor Gillivan, his other partner, Nathan's partner. And just we hit it off because he's an SEO guy, I'm an SEO guy. And through small talk, I got introduced to Nathan, and nothing really ever came of it. It was just a very, how's it going? Like checked in every now and then, see what they were working on SEO wise or business wise. And, Connor and I started texting a little bit and just started steadily talking more and more. And one night I was just like, why don't you guys have an SEO agency? Like this is such a natural fit within your portfolio of businesses and your skill set, et cetera. And he's like, well, we have it all planned out. We have like a 20-page document in terms of our marketing strategy, our sales strategy, competition was already outlined. Like they had already done a lot of research to figure this all out. And they just said, we don't have a CEO or an operator who can step in and see this through. That's kind of what the missing piece is, because Nate and I don't want to run this thing. And so I just immediately pitched myself and was like, I can do this, no problem. I already have this company that I had run with my two partners. and I know the system, I know the exact processes, we can just duplicate that, bring it over to Trio, and just refine it a little bit based on client processes and communication, and then however that looks, and let's just see what happens. And so that's what we did. And now a year later, we have a growing portfolio of clients. I think we're coming up on 20 clients and some great results, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, amazing, and there's a lot of entrepreneurial lessons in there, right? That there's definitely a need to always be networking, and it used to be you'd have to wait until there was such and such industry event, and sometimes you'd go, and sometimes you wouldn't really meet anyone, or you meet the same people. But man, with LinkedIn, there's no excuse for the daily activity now, and like you telling that story there about your networking efforts leading to something amazing tells me that some days with the LinkedIn prospecting, some weeks, some months, it feels like a waste, right? You're like, well, why am I doing this? Am I just kind of procrastinating, wasting time? But then you're doing it for like those small few times when it leads to like some crazy opportunity. It's just like a lot of the times it just leads to like a making a new friend or something, which is great. But then it's like, well, how about that money, right? Or how about the creating a business that like blows up? So that's a cool story about just like being a friendly person, being a problem solver, and being curious about someone else's problem, and not really having any huge expectations. But man, if there is a need for you, it's almost like dating, right? You're like, oh, hey, I know this exact person, and it can definitely work out. And so, in our final few minutes here, we're already over time, but I'm having a blast talking to you, Stephen. I want to make sure that we cover the bases there about AI, because like AI, it's such a double-edged sword, right? Sometimes like I go on web pages, I'm like, I know they wrote this with AI, but I also use the tools every day for things like I load like a bunch of content and I say like, well, can like which of these should link to each other? Or I'm like, can you make a roundup post or new ideas for content? So what are your thoughts on AI, and how do we make sure we use it in a way that gives us good content, makes us money, and isn't just something that cranks out a bunch of garbage?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love AI. I think it's a great tool. The difference is I don't think it's the end all be all solution to content. I would say that if you're trying to rank content on Google, be very, very cautious of how you're getting that AI content. Anybody who just takes it straight from ChatGPT or Gemini and thinks that that's, fine as is and throws it on their site, they have to be able to, withstand the repercussions that might come from, poor or spammy looking content. If it looks like it was written for Google, that's a pretty clear sign. It should read conversationally, should read like you and I are talking. It shouldn't read like it's stuffed with keywords and use, jargon that isn't really in conversational format. A lot of AI platforms will use things like in the digital landscape of today, and it's like no one talks like that. So I think it's just really about being aware of who's on the other side of this content and who's actually engaging with it, and just making sure that it's high quality at the end of the day. We don't stand for any AI content at Trio SEO. We're 100% human written, and that's because we don't want to jeopardize our clients' brands by any Google updates that might come out or penalties on that front. But it is a tool. I mean, I think that it's great for editing content or social media posts or podcast roundup, things that aren't really intended to drive a lot of organic traffic or be in that decision making process. It's more of a how do I optimize this workflow and get a little bit more out of my current process.
Wonderful. 100%, right? Optimize the workflow, and also that the content you're writing, it's for real life humans with real life problems. And if you're just talking about the digital landscape, well, who are you really helping? You're getting the box checked, you're getting the task done, but then you're falling short of what the goal is, which is to get someone's initial problem solved, get them to sign up for your lead magnet, get them to buy, book a call. And how are you going to do that when someone clicks and they say, hey, this is just total complete nonsense, I'm going to click back and go back to where I came from? And so you said a lot of amazing things in our conversation here, Stephen. I had a blast. I hope you had a blast. What are some next steps here? If someone says, man, this whole idea of the 90-day plan, of getting the blogs written, the SEO, I want to investigate that further, take some next steps, where should someone go? What should someone do?
Yeah, you can go to trioseo.com and explore our pricing, our packages, and just kind of take a look at what's a good fit. We can either do full service, which would mean take the entire strategy, upload process, writing, etc., off your plate, Or if you guys have a team of writers, we can also do strategy plus briefs, and then we'll pass the baton over to you and kind of help you, make sure your strategy is on the right track. So we're pretty, flexible in how we can work with any type of business or, current content strategy, whatever you might have. And if you just mentioned that you found me through Robert's podcast, you will get 3 free pieces of content, which is upwards of $1,200 in value for your first month. So pretty good offer, and always happy to help see where things stand. We offer free discovery audits just to kind of get the ball rolling. So yeah, reach out however you can. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there and happy to help.
Very cool. And on LinkedIn, that is Steven Schneider. That last name is Schneider. And that website is TrioSEO.com, TrioSEO.com. And a lot of things you said made complete and total sense here, Steven. Like even your sort of origin story of Nathan and Connor saying, hey, we know we have this problem. We know we have this plan. The missing piece is putting the person into it. And you're like, hey, I'm the person. And so if some company out there, whether you're a M&A company or some other cool niche, and you say, we've got this SEO problem. Maybe we're not consistent with it. We don't like our current writers. We don't like that it's in-house. It helps to drop in that right team in whatever level that you mentioned there, right? Like someone might say, we lost our SEO team or our person. We need to pick it back up, or we just want to throw it out and start over with you. Or even if they're like, well, hey, we're not yet ready with that, then you're saying they can just do the audit, or they can just look at the briefs and the strategy and like pay for that little piece of it. And then they can kind of be like, hey, we're so excited with what Trio SEO is doing for us. We want to pull the trigger and do the whole thing, but you never know what that future will be unless you take the leap and have that chat with Steven and his team by going to TrioSEO.com. And you know what, Steven? I'm sure you do a lot of podcasts, just like how Nathan always like updates his counter. He says like, I've done 700, I've done 800. And so in all of your podcasting adventures, there's always the need to like end on a fun note, right? Instead of just saying, oh, hope you had fun, bye. I like to kind of end with a bang instead of a whimper and ask my guest about a fun quote or lesson that can help us either with SEO, business, personal life, just something amazing, mind-blowing to say, hey, I'm excited, I'm driven to go over to True SEO. So what comes to mind as far as in that context, a fun quote or lesson to tell our listeners?
The first one that comes to mind is patience pays. Those who can withstand the long, kind of grind of outranking their competitors will come out on top. I always like to say people who get into business usually don't have a multi-month time frame in mind. They have a multi-year horizon in mind. So invest in your company, invest in your brand, because your competitors are going to if you don't, and would love to work with you.
Fantastic. So that patience pays, and have that long-term view, figure out your strategy, figure out your plan. Even you mentioned Nathan and Connor, right? They have their 20-page document, and so many people don't have even this basic planning in place. And you check in with people like that years later, and they just gave up on their business. So don't be a statistic. Be someone that takes your business seriously, that plans, that organizes, that it has goals, that has a team that works on these things. And a big part of that is your SEO and your blog writing. And if you find that you just always struggle with that, then stop doing it the hard way. Go to someone that eats, breathes, and sleeps SEO, and that is Mr. Steven Schneider from TrioSEO.com. Go there, talk to Steven and his team. You'll be glad you did. And thank you very much, Steven, for stopping by, showing up, giving us some cool stories, advice. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Robert.